Yes, indeed. Good morning and welcome to Citizen Extra, the Friday edition with me, Freddie Dimuli. Now, 38 days to the general election, media outlets are awash with analysis on voters' numbers. According to the list released by IEBC this week, an increase of more than 5.2 million voters gives us a total of 19,611,000 eligible voters. This bump in numbers definitely has politicians and their parties salivating on one hand, while also leaving them scratching their heads on how to net the support. Where exactly are these new voters? How are they likely to vote at the August polls, and who stands to benefit more from this? This will make up our discussion this morning. We'll also be looking at a ban on undesirable bulk political content on electronic media. That ban is by the National Cohesion and Integration Commission as well as the Communications Authority. Is it necessary? How is it going to work? Because it means that now no vernacular will be used in sending those bulk messages. Later on in the program, we'll be talking to Matatu operators on a peace initiative that they are engaged in ahead of the general election. In studio this morning, we have Dr. Sam Kamau, our analyst. Also, we do have John Kagushia and David Osiani. Good morning, gentlemen, and welcome. Good morning. But before we even engage in that discussion, let's head to the Milimani Law Courts. We're hearing in a case where the National Super Alliance has challenged the award of a ballot printing tender to a Dubai firm, Al Ghurair. The hearing starts this morning. Let's listen in. We do apologize for that poor signal, but once we sort that out, we'll be heading back to the court to hear as the proceedings continue. Back in studio, gentlemen, of course, it's about the numbers now, crunching the numbers. 38 days to the elections. The IEBC released the register of voters per county for this, the register as it stands in 2017, a total of 19,611,423 voters. Now, that's a bump of about 5.2 million voters. Back in 2013, the registered voters were 14,337,399. Votes cast were 12,330,028. Now we're talking about 5 million more votes. Now, the biggest question is, of the two major political divides, who's getting excited by these numbers? Who should get excited, actually? Let's start with you, Brother John Kagushia.
Thank you, Fred. If you look at the numbers that you have, if you are to absolutely look at the numbers and then look at the voting pattern in 2013, then the person who laughs all the way would be the Jubilee side of the government. And this because you find that last time there was the issue of tyranny of numbers. And if you look at the way the registration of voters was done, there was kind of a consistent trend which tended to equalize the way the voters registered. And you see, this was as against a backdrop of higher expectations for the core strongholds to register more. If you look at the figures which had been projected by IEBC, they had anticipated that areas where CORD is strong, like Western Kenya, they were to register more voters than they eventually did. And because now they did not register so many voters, then if you are to gauge or look at the trend of 2013, then Jubilee would be on a head start. Actually, what NASA would be counting on at the moment is that the voting trend will not be as it was in 2013. And indeed, you have heard NASA say that things have changed from how they were in 2013. But definitely, you can tell that everyone is trying to push their agenda to change the numbers or to change the trend as it was in 2013. But of course, Jubilee would be happy if the trend was maintained, because then they would be happy that this is going to be a repeat of 2013, and then they would be carrying the day at the end of the day. And in this case, if the trend remained that way, they would actually be having a comfortable 53–54%, but not the 70% that they had claimed before. Okay. And of course, NASA would be at a loss to get the 10 million strong.
David Osiani, do you agree with Bwana Kagushia that Jubilee should be the ones laughing all the way, given the new numbers?
Kagushia's presumptions are defective, near fatal. I think Kagushia would only hope that the trends stay the same. But Kagushia would also borrow from the 2013 experience that for what was called then, the voting patterns were not the same as they were in 2008, just as they are not going to be the same for Jubilee as they were in 2013, because Jubilee had the massive support of the Maasai community. And right now you're seeing that support is actually wiped out. And the Maasais have generally just, you know, gone for NASA. That's pretty much the same with Meru and Tharaka Nithi that were really strongholds for Jubilee in 2013. Remember that the Tharaka Nithi MCAs from Jubilee all had to resign and say, you know what, it's not working for us. Besides, we are talking about a platform that's tested and proven to be faulty. The Jubilee platform, having gotten the chance to be in government, promised so much, delivered far so little, and people have had the chance to therefore look at them and say, you know what, under your regime, our debt has gone threefold high. Under this regime, jobs have not been created as much as they should have. You know, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics may tell us that we have 800,000 new jobs created, but they funnily do not tell us that we've lost almost 620,000 jobs. Essentially, cumulatively, though, therefore, the amount of jobs created cumulatively is far below the million mark that Jubilee presented. But as opposed to, you know, when he says that the CORD basis did not register as much, you have Kakamega coming among the top 5 counties,
and we'll be looking at some of these counties. We'll be looking at some of these counties and comparing them with the kind of approach we are seeing even on the campaign trail from these both sides. And before we even come to Bwana Sam Kamau, I do understand that the signal from Milimani Law Courts is now clear. Let's head out and listen as a hearing on the case where NASA has challenged the award of a ballot printing tender to Al Ghurair Company. Well, let's listen in as the hearing begins.
May it please you, my lords, we have written submissions and a bundle of authorities filed on the 29th of June, and I believe served on all the parties.
No? We don't? We don't. So Mr. Gatonia? Mr. Gatonia?
What don't you have?
Do you have what do you have? Yes? You have the list of authorities? What about the
Affidavit.
The affidavit was there. I think it is. I read it.
The written submission.
You have the submissions. What about the affidavit? Oh, the document has it now.
This document.
Yeah? Okay. You have a look at it. Okay. Thank you. Third interested party?
Lord, for the third interested party, the first document was on 27th June.
That's a 3-judge bench of the High Court listening to that matter where NASA has challenged the award of a ballot printing tender by IEBC to Al Ghurair. That hearing has kicked off right now at the Milimani Law Courts. Of course, we'll be heading back there to get progress on that particular matter. Back in studio, we continued our discussions, and the question was, who stands to benefit? Who should be laughing all the way to the bank? In as far, if I could use that expression for that matter, in as far as the voters' numbers are concerned. Now, John Kagusha says it's Jubilee. David Osiani says it's NASA. Now, let's get a third opinion. Dr. Sam Kamau, who do you think should be sitting pretty just looking at the 5.2 million new voters that are now on the voters roll?
I think either side should really get excited, because if you look at the way the numbers are, and even the new registration, it doesn't necessarily favor either side. It's still almost a statistical dead hit. If it was a case of simple majority, then you would think that Jubilee has a slight advantage. But this is an issue of 50+1. The other thing is, of course, I disagree with Kagusha that the voting patterns would remain the same as 2013. The factors are different, because in 2013 Jubilee was not in government, and therefore this coming election, of course, will be partly an audit or a referendum on Jubilee's performance. But on the other hand, also NASA, there's a question whether they are stronger or weaker compared to the code of 2013, but there is what they are promising. But if you look at the new registration figures, I feel the only disadvantage for NASA is that from their strongholds, there are more people. They could have gotten more people to register. Because if you look at the people who are eligible to register as voters, they are about 25 million. Those who registered are 19 million. But if you look at now, that 6 million, a good number of them could be from NASA strongholds. And in that sense, then, the registration patterns did not necessarily give them the advantage they have desired. Having said that, there are certain counties, the way they are behaving, either they were battlegrounds previously, but now they appear to be going towards becoming strongholds. Others were strongholds, and they could become battlegrounds.
An example?
I think part of it is Narok, which even previously was battleground. It was almost 50-50, but this time it seems it's leaning towards NASA, because NASA seems to have done a lot of work in that area. Not sure about Kajiado, because I think both coalitions are putting a lot of effort there. I wouldn't say that Meru and Tarakaniri, the way my friend David was suggesting, they have become battlegrounds. I don't think they are battlegrounds yet, but you can see a lot of attention that NASA is giving, because they think they could get something out of there. But if you ask me, Fred, this election will heavily depend on turnout, in terms of which set of supporters are more enthusiastic and passionate and will be eager to get out and vote for their preferred coalition. Now, whether it is the Jubilee supporters who, after having had their leaders in power for 5 years, and whether they are happy or disillusioned with the performance, whether they will be very keen to wake up like they did in 2013, or have a reason for them to go out and vote, or NASA supporters who have been promised a lot in terms of the coalition getting into power, but considering that they have tried in the last couple of elections and not made it, then that issue of passion, enthusiasm, energy, zeal becomes very important.
Now let's take a look at some of these interesting counties and their numbers. And of course, Kiambu has perhaps one of the biggest numbers for a county its size. 1.18 million voters as it stands on the voters roll right now. Previously, as of 2013, the numbers were 861,000. Yes, 862,000 or thereabout, where President Uhuru Kenyatta got 705,000 votes back then. That was about 90%, 90.8%. Raila managed 61,700, which was really decent, given that it is a Jubilee stronghold. But for a county like Kiambu, which is considered President Uhuru Kenyatta's stronghold, to actually manage to register 1.18 million voters, that's a huge bump of about 200, 300,000 more voters. But John Kagusha, this is one of the things that Jubilee was counting on, and they got it right.
They did, in fact. And if you are to look at the difference, which is in Kiambu, for example, just look at 800 and 1.1, that gives you a difference of about 300,000 votes. Look at the friendly counties to NASA, and you see that one swallows about 2 counties, as it were in 2013. Now, my friend Osiani, I think one of the things he did not get me right, maybe he was thinking when I was talking of how he's going to respond, but I said that if, and mark my word, if the voting patterns remain as they were in 2013, then Jubilee would be laughing all the way. Yes, the voting patterns may change. And probably now what we need to analyze is how are these patterns changing? They are changing into whose favor?
Yes.
And if you are to look at that, then you must then bring on board the issue of voter registration. And that is when I will bring the issue of Kiambu. Look at who registered what. And definitely that will tell you that, again, Jubilee continues to have a lead in terms of that. And I believe that, and we said it at that time, that the issue which was raised by then Raila Odinga, that the election had already been stolen, was going to dissuade members from NASA strongholds from registering. And I think it did exactly that. It did not help much to help the members of or people from those areas, or voters from those areas, to come out in large numbers to vote. Then I also want you to look at Nairobi. And Nairobi has really gone up in terms of the numbers that they have registered.
Yes.
And I also want to remind you that a lot of politicians, especially from around the city, have brought a lot of voters to the city of Nairobi.
When it comes to Nairobi,
yeah.
you cannot say it is pure. It would go purely the same way that Kiambu would. Nairobi is pretty cosmopolitan.
It is cosmopolitan, and if you look at it, last time Raila actually had an edge over Uhuru Kenyatta, narrow margin. And
do you think that will change this time around?
That may change, and it will change depending on how Jubilee will take it, because a lot of voters have been brought to Nairobi to vote, especially during the nomination process.
Yes.
A lot of politicians transported voters to Nairobi. In fact, you remember, it was a big outcry, especially from politicians who are up country. And of course, people who are able to do this are politicians normally who are around the city. Now, one thing that Jubilee will need to do, and if they don't do, then NASA will still have a head start in Nairobi, is to ensure that those politicians who never went through during the nomination process or during the nomination exercise, the people they brought to Nairobi to vote, they need to take care of them in terms of facilitation. If they don't do that, then of course NASA will maintain a lead in Nairobi.
In Nairobi, the current voter number in Nairobi, it's 2,250,853. That's according to the latest register. Back in 2013, the total number was 1.728 million. That's a bump of about 500,000. That's 500,000 more voters. Yes, Raila Odinga led with 691,000 back in 2013. Uhuru Kenyatta had 659,000. A difference of about 30,000 or so. David Oceani, this one was a dead hit. 30,000 in Nairobi is a very small margin. Now there are 500,000 more voters in Nairobi. Do you think this margin will go in anyone's favor?
I want us to realize, as we talk about the voting, for example, in Nairobi and many other places in the last election, that there was some weird 2 million Kenyans who decided to walk to the ballot papers, to the ballot boxes, and only vote for the president, which is what was the basis for a case for court in 2013. That they seemed to countrywide, nationwide, I'm saying. Yeah. And so in Nairobi, as we the voting trends have always shown that I think the ex-prime minister has always been a little stronger in Nairobi, whereas it's always ended up 52, 48%, 52 in his advantage, 48 in the advantage. In the last election, it was pretty close. For 500,000 voters, I still think he would be able to lead by quite a margin. Be that as it may, I think the registration in Nairobi and countrywide shows that there was very massive. The Kagusha is trying to insinuate, I bet, that the CORD strongholds, just as some had stated earlier, may not have registered as much. I think they're forgetting to talk about Nyeri, that has registered very little voters, and many other parts, and forgetting that Kakamega had 362,000 voters in the last election, for example, and has 758 in the coming election, an increase of about 400,000, which shows that there was work in both sides, in my estimation. And therefore, I really hope it will be for the Kenyans to tell. I agree with some.
The question is, the numbers in Nairobi, do you agree, for example, with that theory that there was a lot of voter transfers from regions around Nairobi? And when you say around Nairobi, you're talking about Murang'a, Kiambu.
No, I think it was intra-city. I bet most of the voters were moved, for example, from Kibra to Lang'ata, or moved from Embakasi East to Embakasi West. I bet the movement was pretty much intra, because we have an electorate that really cherishes voting in their ethnic basis, majority of them. So it would have been very hard, for example, to move a voter from Kiambu into Nairobi. I doubt that will stand. I cannot say expressly.
So the
but I bet it may
500,000
have
new
been
voters, these are new voters from within Nairobi. But now, how do we tell which way they would go?
All right, Sam will take that.
No, when Sam Kamau.
Yeah.
500,000 new voters in Nairobi, that's huge.
Yeah,
Anyone who can be able to capture that
yeah.
will be laughing all the way. Because yes, even just in as far as getting the 50+1, such a number, 500,000 votes from one county is huge.
It's massive.
Fred, first allow me to dismiss a myth that CORD has been propagating since 2013. There were 2 million voters who voted for the president and not the other positions. The ABC data actually says otherwise. It was just something they needed to tell their supporters to explain the loss in 2013. But looking at the numbers in Nairobi, it is true that Jubilee friendly or leaning candidates imported very many voters to Nairobi. I actually know a candidate who brought in about 4,000 from Murang'a to Nairobi, and that could account for some of the numbers. Where I think it could be a disadvantage for Jubilee in terms of these numbers is that if this candidate lost, unless he is facilitated, and I think Osiani knows what facilitation means, to get these people to actually travel from Murang'a and Kiambu to come and vote, this is not so good for the presidential vote, because it means it will deny, for example, President Uhuru Kenyatta, those votes in Murang'a or in Kiambu and also in Nairobi. But these new numbers, looking at it, again, I still expect Nairobi to be evenly split, the same way it has always been, the registration. If we were looking at the specific, that is from the different constituencies, to try and understand, because we, at least we understand how the constituencies vote, maybe this would be clearer. But I still expect it to remain at around 50-50 or 49-51, the same way it has always been.
So you don't expect it to tilt so much in anyone's favor?
I don't expect, unless there are new factors in terms of how candidates campaign, or who has the momentum going into the very last days.
Okay. Rather curiously, we've been seeing both sides try and make forays into hitherto perceived strongholds of the other. Of course, President Uhuru Kenyatta was in Western Kenya, Bungoma, Busia. You remember the issue about the Sigiri Bridge. We'll be looking at the numbers from those counties. NASA has also just finished a tour of Narok County. They spent 2-3 days there. Just an indicator of how important Narok County is. Let's probably look at the numbers in Narok County. Narok County in 2013 had a total of 262,739 registered voters. In 2017, they have 341,000. Okay, a bump of about less than 100,000 either way. Raila Odinga back in 2013 got 118,000 votes from Narok County. President Uhuru Kenyatta got 109,000 votes. A difference of about 9,000-10,000 votes, also split almost the same way as Nairobi. Why is Narok considered a swing county this time round by John Kagushia? Do we expect any difference that probably it could actually tilt in anyone's favor and a clear majority?
Yeah, thank you very much, Fred. And just before I go there, I would like to make 2 corrections on what Osiani has said. It's very important for us to use facts and figures rather than just some issues that are not based on facts. If you look at the 2 million figure that he has claimed that was voting for the president and not voting for the other contestants, I would want to say that the highest margin, which was between the presidential vote and MCAs, was 163,000 votes. Otherwise, that means that 163,000 people who voted for the president did not vote for the MCAs. And when you look at the lowest level or lowest margin was between the members of parliament. Only about 35,000 people voted for the presidents, the 2 presidents or the other presidential candidates that were there, but they did not vote for the MPs. That means then the issue of the 2 million does not arise, and then it becomes just a propaganda and not really a factual issue. So in that case, I think that that is not the case. Then if you look at what he has also said, that Kakamega had about 300 and something, I think you can check your facts. Kakamega did not register more than 40%. He did not get more than 40%, because what he has claimed then would be more than 100%. And I don't remember Kakamega really getting more than 100% in terms of voter registration. I think we'll need to check those facts. Then when you go to Narok, it is true, Narok in 2013 was a battleground, and the president, Kenyatta, was able to get about 48% as opposed to Raila Odinga's 52%. And that tells you that at that time, Uhuru Kenyatta was able to get a bit of support from the Maasai community. And you remember very well, that time Raila Odinga had on his side people like Olenti Mama, who then came hailed from Narok, and almost all the bigwigs who have commandeered the Maasai region. They were actually supporting NASA.
Do you see the trend remaining the same in Narok, now that we are seeing both sides of the political divide actually paying a lot of attention to this particular county? It's one of those regarded as a swing county. Do you agree that it is still a swing county?
It is. The fact that you have seen NASA brigade go to NASA in Kajiado, and by the way, they go there after every 2 weeks. The other week they had gone there again for 4 days, and again they were there back again this week again for 2 days. They go there virtually every week, and I think the Jubilee strategy would be to finish with their strongholds, and then of course, because you know they have spent so much time also in Western Kenya and coast, they probably will then come to the Maasai community, Kajiado and Narok, probably from next week or the other week, and they are likely also to spend a bit of time in those in that region. And as we talk now, I know the NASA brigade has been able to get some fruits from their visits to that region quite often. And you see a number of leaders have shifted towards NASA. But again, I think that may just be short-lived, because this is an area where none of the coalitions will be able to or be ready to leave it to the other one. So I know for sure Jubilee will also be going there with more strength, with more presence and dominance, and they will try to do whatever it is they can do to be able to gain back any ground that they may lose during these 2 weeks that they have not visited the area. And if you look at other areas like Western Kenya,
and we'll get to that. We'll get to that because I want us to go county by county. Narok, it was 46% Uhuru Kenyatta, 50% Raila Odinga last time. This time round, there's a bump of about 100,000 new voters. The debate is on whether or not that could tilt in anyone's favor. Just before we take an update, still on these issues about voter numbers from Uasin Gishu, our reporter John Wanyama is on standby. A correction about the Kakamega numbers. Now that that issue has been raised, and I have the numbers here. Kakamega County, as of 2013, had 567,000 voters. 467,000 did vote that particular time. Raila Odinga got 303,000. Musalia Mudavadi got 144,000. Then Uhuru Kenyatta got 12,000. That was back in 2013. The numbers as of 2017 stand at 743,736, a bump of about 200,000, a good 200,000. So yes, it may not be the 300,000 that David Oceani said, but still a good bump nonetheless. 200,000 is a huge number. Kakamega is not considered a battleground. Probably Bungoma, we'll be looking at Bungoma as well. Let's now head to Uasin Gishu, which is not considered a battleground either way. They have very good numbers. Uasin Gishu County, 450,000 voters as at the register right now. I cannot trace the numbers of 2013, but let's take this update from John Wanyama. Very good morning, John. What can you tell us from Eldoret this morning?
Good morning, Indimuli, and as you've said rightfully, is that we are in Uasin Gishu County here, and also numbers in Uasin Gishu, as you've said, is 400,000 voters registration here in Uasin Gishu County. The number went up slightly after the last registration, and in the Muli here, people were asking themselves questions whether Jubilee will be able to garner all votes 100% from this region, putting in mind that this region is for home turf of Deputy President William Ruto. But now there is also an issue of ODM who are here, especially in Tarbo constituency, and in Uasin Gishu, Tarbo constituency is the constituency with the highest numbers of voters, people registered as voters in this county. In the Muli, it will be remembered that Uasin Gishu voted in large numbers to Uhuru Kenyatta in the last general election, and the question most of people are asking is will he again garner all those large numbers that he got in the last general election? In the morning with me is a Taribo constituency MP candidate whom we want to talk to, just maybe to give us a sneak peek of what is happening in the Jubilee region here in Uasin Gishu, Mr. Mheshimiwa Kevin Okwara. Mheshimiwa, my first question to you. Do you think you guys will deliver Jubilee votes to Jubilee as a government?
Well, thank you so much, my brother. I want to assure Kenyans that Uasin Gishu, which has traditionally voted for government, would definitely deliver the 450 votes. Maybe 1 or 2 votes may go astray because you know that we are heavily cosmopolitan. Let me talk about Tarbo. Tarbo is a heavily cosmopolitan area, and it consists of all the 43 tribes. But I'd like to assure you, it's the home of the DP, and the number of Jubilee, Jubilee voters in Tarbo is enormous. And I want to say this, that we have people who voted otherwise in 2013. We have gone to the ground, and I want to assure Kenyans, especially those that are in Jubilee, that Tarbo will lead in giving votes for the Jubilee government, and at large the entire Uasin Gishu. You realize that it's only in Tarbo where we have one candidate standing in NASA. The rest are all in parties that actually affiliated to Jubilee. And in all the 6 constituencies, it's only in Tarbo where we have a NASA candidate. And that tells you that the number of votes going to come in for Jubilee will be enormous. And so Uasin Gishu is going to be painted Jubilee everywhere.
There is this narrative that is on the ground that Jubilee, most of people are feeling like people will vote governor, MPs, downward will be Jubilee, but upwards they are going to vote NASA. Have you come across this one?
Where upwards means the president?
Yes.
No. I want to assure the president, because when I go campaigning, many times I talk to people. We are looking for all the votes, right from the presidential vote to the MCA. And I want to assure the Republic, I want to assure Kenyans, I want to assure those that are die-hard Jubilee members that we are on the ground. We are doing every effort to make sure that we get that one vote back to Jubilee. So I do not expect Raila and his people would get any much votes in Tarbo, and especially in Uasin Gishu. I think the die is already cast. People are willing to vote, and when you go all over, you'll hear Jubilee songs singing everywhere. The rest is sheer propaganda.
Thank you very much, Indimuli. And as you know, Indimuli, this week Raila Odinga is expected to visit Elgeyo Marakwet, where those former MPs in that region are also going to leave Jubilee Party and join ODM Party. So we are waiting to see, Indimuli, how things will turn out, to see maybe whether this region will really deliver, as the Mheshimiwa has said, to Jubilee government. In the morning, we are still following up on these stories and many others. Once we get the facts right, we will get back to you, and our viewers will be the first one to be informed. Back to your studio in the morning.
Thank you, John. John Wanyama there, live from Uasin Gishu, Tarbo to be exact, giving us an update on the numbers there. And just to clarify, yes, Uasin Gishu had 330,000 registered voters back in 2013. 211,000 did vote for Uhuru Kenyatta. 60,000 voted for Raila Odinga, with 7,000 voting for Musalia Mudavadi. Now, Raila Odinga getting 60,000 out of the 211, that's between 25 to 30%. That's a decent figure there. Right now, there's a bump of about 120,000 more voters. Now they stand at 450,000. If the trend continues, if Raila Odinga still gets about 25% of that vote, what does it mean for Uasin Gishu, which is considered a Jubilee stronghold? Sam Kamau, yes, a quick comment about what's happening in Uasin Gishu. Yes, a bump of about 120,000 last time, despite it being considered a Jubilee stronghold, the other side still got a decent 25%. That's huge.
Yes, Fred, if you look at Rift Valley, I know we say Rift Valley is a Jubilee stronghold, but you still, and from even 2013, you know, the whole of Rift Valley has many other counties and communities are represented there. So you see that even NASA or CORD in 2013 managed almost, I think, more than 30%, and I think you can confirm from the figures. And the same is also likely to happen because, like you have seen, CORD had quite a decent showing in Uasin Gishu. Well, it still remains Jubilee stronghold everywhere you look at it because partly of the demographics and there, but it's very cosmopolitan, and therefore you still see pockets of votes that will lean towards NASA. I wanted to say something about Narok, Fred.
Yes.
In 2013, and maybe this is Masai landed, other than General Kaiseri, all the other MPs from the Masai region were either TNA or URP. The same also with the governor position. For Kajiado, is just that the TNA governor was locked out close to the elections, and therefore the ODM candidate had a clear run. But Narok again, both the senator and the governor again were from Jubilee. So that tells you that it still remains, like I said, a battleground, but NASA seems to be gaining ground because of their efforts, and they seem to have the right message for the people. The people of Narok have many complaints against the Jubilee government over the last 4.5 years, and the messages that NASA is taking there seems to be finding fertile ground. I suspect that Jubilee will try to counter that, but as it remains now, it's a battleground that is leaning NASA.
David, about Narok?
Well, I have to say that we have to understand that historically, Narok has been a Raila Odinga zone until the last election in 2013, where there seems to have been a problem with the CORD campaigns in Narok, leading to the Narok voters snubbing the former Prime Minister.
But however, he got most of the votes. He got 118,000 against Uhuru Kenyatta's 109,000.
118,000 for a place that ought to be a stronghold, where you should have gotten a 70% vote, because 2007 will show you something different. And it was not, I bet it's not the root of support. So you wouldn't argue that then William left, so then that was the effect. No. The reason why I think it's going to still almost move away from being a battleground that it was in 2013 to a stronghold, if not then a near stronghold with a 60-65% plus turnout for Raila, is the land issue has become very emotive. Remember that Transparency International did a survey asking which is the biggest problem in Kenya. It wasn't even corruption. Land was the first of the list, followed by corruption. The land issue in Narok is so emotive, and he has been able to, I think, talk to them in a language they understand best, telling them the people promising to bring transformation are themselves the problem. He was there 2 days ago, asking the people in Narok, can the deputy president tell us how he acquired Murumbi's farm, 2,000 acres? All right. Now, such questions, and besides, there's also the Masai Mara resources and how they've been managed. Fingers have pointed to the Jubilee leadership, especially they seem to be pointing to the deputy president, asking why he seems to be too involved.
So you think these issues will actually make Narok County move from being a battleground?
I bet they will. I bet they will.
Fred, actually, Governor Ruto, his party will have a very strong showing. I think actually the strongest party in Narok is CCM.
Yes.
Actually, I would want to just point out something on Narok and say that, unlike what Osiani has said, again, I want us to go back to the facts. Narok is not Raila Odinga's stronghold. It only voted for Raila Odinga in 2007, when the whole of Rift Valley voted for Raila Odinga. But in 2013, when the Rift Valley again shifted towards Jubilee, Narok shifted. Only that there was still the remnants of the support that Raila had gotten in the previous years. And if you look at the issue of the land, the Murumbi's land, if you look at that issue, again, one of the questions maybe that Jubilee may want to ask is that James Orengo was the Minister for Lands for 5 years, from 2008 all the way to 2013.
Go to the issue of land. We're just looking at the numbers here. We're looking at the numbers, gentlemen. Let's not divert.
I think Kagusha is becoming a politician. He's a lawyer, so I know he has mastered the art of speaking from both sides of the mouth. But facts as they are, and be they as they may, is that the two emotive issues in Narok right now are seemingly being best addressed by the NASA leadership. They seem to believe more. Why? Because the Jubilee regime, in their estimation, has had a chance
and Fred,
to show them that this
the issue that I'm raising on the issue of land. I'm saying the issue of land cannot probably be handled best if we were to look at the history under the NASA leadership, and probably that's one of the issues that then will be raised when it comes to maybe the restoration in terms of the messaging that has gone to the Narok people, because as Osiani puts it, it's true, the land issue is an emotive issue there. But again, we also have had James Orengo being the Minister for Lands for about 5 years
but
in the
coalition. Gentlemen, let's move away from Narok. Let's move away from Narok. Let's head out to Western Kenya now.
Okay.
Because Western Kenya, yes, it's there seems to be a belief that out of the counties there, that probably Bungoma County could be a battleground. Out of the Bungoma, Busia, Kakamega and Vihiga counties, that probably the one county that could be said could go against the grain could be Bungoma County. Let's look at the numbers. 410,000 back in 2013. 185,000 voted for Raila Odinga. 107,000 voted for Musalia Mudavadi. 42,000 voted for Uhuru Kenyatta. Let's look at the numbers this time round. In Bungoma County, yes, Bungoma County, right now the numbers stand at 559,850. That's a bump of over 240,000, 250,000 actually, 250,000 new registered voters. With now the fact that Raila Odinga and Musalia Mudavadi are on one side. Remember, they split the votes here, 185,000 for Raila, 107,000 for Musalia, 42,000 for Uhuru Kenyatta. Right now, do you think these numbers could go, or rather, do you expect this trend to change? Bwana Samkama.
Fred, I think we agree the Western region is predominantly a NASA stronghold, the whole of Western. But the difference this time, like you currently pointed out, is that Musalia Mudavadi and Raila Odinga and a few other Western leaders are strongly together in NASA. And I can also tell you confidently that Jubilee, of course, is not hoping to make Western region a battleground. What Jubilee needs, this is a battle for numbers. Remember, we say this is not an issue of simple majority. It's getting to 50+1. And therefore, Jubilee knows if we could get a significant percentage. Now, what is significant depends on how somebody interprets it. But they know that from Lower Eastern, from Western, from Coast Province, which are considered not Coast Province, but Coast Region, which are considered NASA strongholds, Jubilee knows that they need a significant percentage of those voters to vote for them to get to 50+1. And I think they have identified a few areas. One of them is Bungoma, because historically Bungoma tends to vote differently from the rest of the Western region. I don't know what are the historical factors that do this, but if you look at the way Jubilee is consistently going to that particular region, and they are showing, and of course some areas like Bungoma town is quite cosmopolitan, and again you still expect some Jubilee leaning, let's say MCAs and maybe even some MPs.
The governor is actually Jubilee leaning.
Exactly.
Yes.
So because of that, Jubilee knows that they will get a significant percentage of the votes. And I think their target for Bungoma County, it could be about 30%. For Kakamega, Vihiga and the other counties, they just hope that it could get a significant percentage that will help them. But the other thing, Fred, I want to say, and this applies across all the battlegrounds and even these strongholds, you realize the two coalitions are going with different messaging to each and every county or each and every region. And that is why, for example, Narok now, they're using the issue of land and the historical injustices, or TJRC. That is something Raila will always mention when he goes to Masai land. I think the messaging, including propaganda, of course, is definitely targeted to help these people who could be undecided or who could be wavering to vote in a particular way. And I think we'll continue seeing that everywhere these guys go, they will tend to have a message that is very specific to these particular areas. Now, for Western, what is the message from Jubilee and what is the message from NASA? From NASA, of course, is that this is our turn. You have the numbers. We have a good share of the government. Of course, Jubilee will say what you're looking for, what you've been promised in NASA is what you already have, if it is 2 cabinet slots. So you look at the kind of messaging and what is likely to achieve. But we will not try to say that it's a battleground. Okay. It remains a NASA stronghold.
Before we get views from David Osiani and John Kagushi, I think it's a good time to take a break. We'll be right back with this and a lot more. Remember, if at all Jubilee is saying Bungoma County can as a battleground, do you think NASA could view areas like Meru or Tharaka-Nithi as battlegrounds as well? That when Power Breakfast, when Citizen Extra returns.